normally in the middle we kind of begin to feel settled in, and that would have worked if we didn't have to change rooms in the middle. But I hope you are feeling a little settled and kind of getting into the routine. You know, sometimes the first night or two at a new place is a little tedious, so I hope that's getting better for you. This morning we're going to talk about beauty. As they talk about it, practice it in different traditions, in different cultures, different religions. As we will examine some of their vocabulary and what that means for our understanding of what beauty is. Because I think when we get to listen to these things that are a little bit less familiar to us, perhaps they add a little depth to our own lexicon of meaning for what it means to be people who seek beauty. And we'll find that they find, as we do, we find that somehow God is in beauty or is beauty, and that God calls to us through that. And I think we're going to find some similarities and some differences. So it's hard to imagine that there's more than we already talked about, but apparently there is, and so we're going to try to dig some of that out. So the first place I'm stopping is with an author-teacher called Kabir Helminski. He is a Sufi teacher and writer, and he said, "Beauty is whatever pleases not only the senses, but the mind and heart. But true beauty draws us into a relationship with the divine, whether it be the beauty of nature, of virtue, of character, the beauty of anything as a reflection of ultimate beauty. God is beautiful, and God loves the beautiful." Kabir Helminski. We'll talk about him again. But when I read that, I thought if I didn't know better, I would have thought that Helminski was in conversation with C.S. Lewis, because they both have told us that beauty is a reflection of the ultimate beauty. Beauty is a reflection of the divine, and that somehow it's calling us and drawing us, and that it's essential. Beauty isn't an extra, not an option. So it's Sufi teaching as well as Christian teaching. But I think Helminski goes even farther. And he, in doing that, he unites our two topics for this week. He unites us in our conversation between beauty and silence, because he says that within our own hearts is where we find beauty, not with what we see. Beauty we find in our own hearts. And he said that's where the discovery comes from. It comes from inside, not outside. He writes, "We may discover great beauty in contemplation and yet not consider beauty as originating within ourselves. Makes it a little slippery. We think it's something that comes from outside when in fact it's coming from inside." And this was the most fascinating to me. What we contemplate, we become. What we contemplate, we become. Sound familiar? The mystery of love is that we become what we delight to gaze upon. John Main and Helminski could have been talking to each other, but I don't think they overlapped in when they were alive. So Helminski says that this invisible beauty discovered within has a counterpart in the world. You know, it's the things that we see with our eyes, but that the world, the things we see with our eyes, becomes only beautiful to the extent that we are conscious of the invisible beauty. To the extent we are conscious of the invisible beauty, that means we have to have a blessed or graced gaze. It starts inside. Again, there's someone who believes that the beauty we see without is because of what we already have within, and also that what we see on the outside is actually speaking, is actually calling, he says. He uses the word calling. And it's as though the one who is within us, the spirit who lives in our hearts, is whispering to us of the things that our eyes can't see without that whisper. So Helminski, from his own tradition and culture, reinforces what we have already learned, what we've already been talking about, and perhaps already we have experienced this. But he names the seeing and then the understanding of beauty as a conversation, as two sides of a coin. Divine beauty within brings into reality the beauty without. So, beauty as God unveiled, we said yesterday, and Helminski would agree with that. His conclusion is that since divine beauty exists to reveal itself to us, the purpose of divine beauty is to reveal itself to us. The possibility of us knowing the infinite is in our knowing ourselves, in our hearing that whisper, in our hearing those proddings from what we see with our eyes. So that's how the Sufi understand beauty and silence, as this ongoing dialectic, this ongoing conversation that happens absolutely within us. And he says, at all times, it's always happening. There's never an opportunity for it to not be happening. The opportunity is whether or not we choose to see it, whether or not we choose to look at it, look for it. Yeah. And that really is what we heard in part of what we read last night from John Main, and I'm going to just recap a little piece of that because it makes more sense to me together. And this is a piece of what I read from last night. It is in this sense that meditation is rightly called a way of wisdom and a way of vision. It is more than the knowledge derived from accumulated experience, more than the power to just visualize. To be wise, we must learn to know with our hearts. To see, we must learn to see with our hearts. The medium of this commitment is silence, and by becoming genuinely silent, going beyond all thoughts, we quite naturally open our hearts to the light of infinity. Wow. Wow. Echoes again of the mystery of love. And so when we have opened our hearts to the light, we become light. We're invited into a dialogue. And it's not one that we start, it's one that's already ongoing and that we walk into. So, Sufi tradition. The other thing I found was is just the language of German mystics. The word for beautiful is the word for shining. Shining. Something or someone of beauty has an inner beauty that permeates their entire being and shines out into the world. To image beauty as shining seems it seems a little bit louder than silence if someone is shining. But I would hazard a guess that many of us know or have known people or have encountered a person, even maybe by chance, who we imagine as shining. There was just something. We might not be able to name it, but there was something emanating from that person. Not a physical manifestation. I'm not talking about auras, or perhaps there could be. But I think this idea of beautiful as shining points to someone whose inner beauty shines through, a person in whom the divine presence can not only be sensed but seen, perhaps, shining by means of a pure heart, shining in love and in justice or in mercy or in goodness or kindness. The shining language reminds me of a book by Macrina Whitaker called A Tree Full of Angels. And she writes, every tree is full of angels, and hidden beauty is waiting in every crumb. Life wants to lead you from crumbs to angels, but this can happen only if you are willing to unwrap the ordinary by staying with it long enough to harvest its treasure. We've done a lot of repeating and a lot of looking again and a lot of deep listening. And there's something to that as a discipline, as a practice that we need to acquire to be able to see the beauty that is around us. We have to pay attention. Modern language for that is we have to be mindful. There it is, yeah? It is in our meditation that we stay with the seeing, I think, that Whitaker talks about, to be able to see what is shining in creation, what is the angels in every tree. We have to stay with things. We can't just be flitting from one thing to another. There's more of a discipline to life to be able to see in this way. Yeah. So I read her book 100 years ago. It's still on my shelf, although I cull my books regularly. That one has managed to make all the cuts. When we moved 2 years ago, Sam took 20 boxes of books to Goodwill. And well, there's still more, and she made the cut. She's still there on the shelf. So I went through my underlines, as I want to do when I go back to a book to see what I thought was important last time. And she said that that those who can see this way, and she used this word, are then commissioned to shine before others. Isn't that interesting? Those who can see, once we've learned it, once we received it, once we appropriated it, once we have it, we have a task, and the task is to shine before others. Is a second step in the process. And if we can remember back to Monday, Jonathan Edwards also had a two-step for us. He wanted us to see and delight. She wants us to see and shine before others. So with the gift, there comes responsibility. Yeah, with the gift, there comes responsibility. Two-step. So how is it that we can be a part of a beautiful shining? How can we pay forward, pay out the brilliance that we receive? And how exactly does this shining draw us closer to God? When I think of shining, the first place my mind goes is to the Old Testament, where the prophet's face had to be put under a veil, because when he saw God, then he came down the mountain and his face was shining. When I think of shining, I think of the sky above Bethlehem when Jesus was born. All the things, when I think of shining, refer me to biblical stories. And so I think there is something both beautiful and divine about this idea of shining. So don't lose that idea of shining. Look for the shining. To look out at the lake. Well, not today. It's very still today, but yesterday it was shining like crazy. There was so much breeze over that lake, and it just was glistening.
Kathleen, it makes me think of Thomas Merton's experience, his mystical experience at Fourth and Walnut, where he says he loves all people, and he says, do they realize that they are shining like the sun?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that.
Jesus saying, we are the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hide under a lampshade.
Don't hide under the bushel. Yeah. Does someone take a light and put it under a bushel?
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Yeah, a lot of shining. Wow. I found two different blessings for beauty, which is interesting. Didn't know they existed. The first is a Jewish blessing. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who made such beautiful things in his universe. So if you've ever been to a synagogue or ever been to prayers in a Jewish person's home, you know the first part of that, blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe. That starts all their prayers. We hear that over and over again. If you ever gone to a Seder, we hear that over and over again. But the second part I've never heard before. Who made such beautiful things in his universe, who we call God the maker of beauty. Wow. Who we call God the maker of beauty, from our Jewish brothers and sisters. The second blessing is from the Navajo Nation. With beauty before me may I walk. With beauty behind me may I walk. With beauty above me may I walk. With beauty all around me may I walk. Sounds kind of Patrick Celtic-esque to me. It's Navajo. To walk in beauty is a translation of the Navajo term for the spiritual path. Interesting. The whole spiritual path is walking in beauty, thinking and acting as a way of beauty, a spiritual path. How they explore their own inner relationship to everyone else, to nature. It's the spiritual path on which they walk. To walk in beauty is to be in balance and in conscious relationship to the wisdom of nature and remembering the mystery of it all. The more I hear of stories of other cultures and traditions, the more I'm reminded of the term oneing. You know that word, oneing? Rohr uses it for the title of a publication, but it is really Julian of Norwich. It's the oneness, the unity of the spirit. Not uniformity, but unity of spirit, yeah, of all creation. Richard Rohr says all truth is one. It's a single source from which we have all come, whether we have language to describe that or not. So, in the Greek, to kalon is the Greek for the beautiful, which includes both physical and moral beauty. Because I said before, it's not just things we see. It can be acts of kindness or compassion. It can be acts of mercy and acts of justice. Those are beautiful things. We need to see them that way. Those are beautiful things. It's also related to a word that sounds like it, kalin, which means to call or invite or to appeal to. Christine Walter's painter, who I referred to earlier, said that beauty calls to us, and it calls to our hearts, and our hearts reverberate. With delight. Our task is simply to listen for when beauty is calling us. So there's a short verse from India to add to our collection, and it's short. I know a cure for sadness. Let your hands touch something beautiful that makes your eyes smile. I bet there are 100 objects close by that can do that. So look at beauty's gift Her power is so great, she enlivens the earth, the sky, and our soul. She enlivens the earth, the sky, and our soul. Yeah. So, you want to stop the video?